The Islamic identity, the Arab identity, the Omani identity.
To be called to the stage, the school stage, and sing a Christmas song or a Christmas carol. Yeah, I know all of them.
Why did you come to Oman?
If I had your passport, I wouldn't even come to Oman.
Finding the Muslim identity.
Right.
Did you find it?
I said, I want to go to Saudi Arabia. I want to go to Mecca. I want to live in Mecca.
We didn't have the opportunity to do the sunnah of Hijrah.
Identity is based a lot on color in the West. Why are you dressing like that? Why do you want to live there?
It is something huge to let go of everything you had for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My dear brothers and sisters, welcome to Dome Podcast with me, your host, Hatim Al Abdissalaam. Today is a unique day because today there was a speech by His Majesty Sultan Hatim bin Tariq on national TV a few hours ago, and he spoke about so many things. Among the important things that he mentioned was to preserve our identity. And today we have a special guest, Mr. Hamza Al Kinani, who's going to talk about the idea of identity. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Hamza.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's nice to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Alhamdulillah. Mr. Hamza, before we carry on, a lot of people are going to be confused between the accent, the North American accent, and your looks. So I did not want to, introduce you officially, so I'll leave the introduction to you. So you can introduce yourself so the audience can know who's Mr. Hamza.
Alhamdulillah, Bismillah. Well, my name is Hamza Abdissalaam Al Kinani, and I was born in Canada. We're talking about identity here.
Yes.
Born in Canada. I was raised up in America. My father was a Canadian, former British national, and my mother is an American, also former British national as well. And I was raised up in America, and approximately 5 years ago, I moved to Oman. And obviously, I found a new identity.
MashaAllah. What about your profession, Mr. Hamza?
I just came from work now, so you see me dressed the way I'm dressed. I'm the head of a department, an English department, and I'm a Cambridge curriculum coordinator at a private school here in Mabela, Muscat.
MashaAllah.
Yes.
Mr. Hamza, when someone sees me on the street and he asks me, Hatim, what's your identity?
Right.
It's very easy for me to say I'm an Omani.
Okay.
Now, when people ask you, Mr. Hamza, what is the answer that you give them?
The interesting thing is this. My wife is an Omani.
Yes.
And she asks me every time something is happening, some guests are over, we're eating some food. And not just her, everybody around me is always asking me, well, what do you do? What do you do? What do you guys do? What do you guys do? And it's a difficult question because identity, being a North American,
Yes.
we have several identities. Several identities because the people of North America all came from several different places. And so they brought with them many different cultures and many different identities. And so you're like a sushi roll.
It becomes very, very difficult.
You're just like the mess, and you're just rolling it all up, and it becomes you. So it's difficult to answer that question. Of course, we always had the identity of our home and our home culture with mother and father and siblings, and that was the base. But a lot of people in the West,
It's difficult to have an identity.
It's difficult to have. It's because you outside. It's one thing at home, and it's one thing. It's different on the other, and that's not the same in Oman. Because what would be at home would be reflective in society as well.
Let me tell you about one of my friends.
Okay.
He is an Australian, and his wife is also an Australian.
Okay.
And once I asked him, can you tell me a little bit? Can you give me a little bit of background between where your parents are coming from and your wife as well? And he said, my father is Palestinian.
Okay.
My mother is from Yugoslavia. My wife, her father is Egyptian, and her mother is Somali.
Subhanallah.
and our kids are United Nations.
I can relate too, brother. I have children. And even in Oman, there is some difference in identities as well.
Yes.
In the family I'm married to, the father is from the village, Bedouin, as we would say, and no disrespect, in no way is that. The mother is raised and brought up in East Africa, so has a Swahili culture, as they would call Zanjibari culture. And in the home, you'll find
the difference.
You
between the two cultures,
and it's evident when you go to one side of the family's house to visit, and the other side of the mother's side of the family's house to visit, and then you see the difference.
Yes.
So I noticed that, and then you have also the siblings that I'm around. They would have maybe somewhat of a, they can speak another language. For example, some of them will know the language of Baluchi, and I asked them, how do you know that? You have no relationship to Iran or Pakistan. Well, our friends were Baluchi, so we got that culture. They might even have the hats and the traditional Baluchi clothes, like for Eid. Some of the ladies and stuff, just because of their friends giving them those outfits and things like this. So. But I mean, one good thing about it is they're very respectful of each other's identities and cultures.
And this is where we want to come to this point, Mr. Hamza, is that we are a nation that we all complement one another.
Right.
And we all, can coexist with one another.
Definitely.
No culture is better than another. And whatever identity you choose to have, then it's fine as long as it doesn't go against your values, your faith, your traditions, and so on. But, today's speech of His Majesty, when he emphasized about the importance of holding on to the identity, I think there are, mainly three main identities that he's talking about when it comes to the people of Oman. The first one is the Islamic identity, which is very important.
Right.
And the second one is the Arab identity. And the third one is the Omani identity. And you being in the education system, Mr. Hamza, you can see now with young kids how easily they can change their identity.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I should leave the floor for you to tell us a little bit about that.
Well, identity is quite global, and as much as we may have an identity in a culture that we're growing up in, it's also slowly changing due to globalization, the internet. A lot of I hate to bring up this example, but my daughter the other day was talking to me, was showing me something, she had on the internet, and she was asking me if I knew them, and I said, well, what is it? And she showed me these boys from Korea, and he's like, all the girls at the school are talking about this, and she was asking me about them, if I knew them, and she's like, yeah, they all like them, and for me, it looked like a bunch of, males, dressed up in makeup like women, and she said that this is what people are liking, and this is what they're interested in. So I saw that I see that the identity of maybe Omani traditional music could be kind of morphing into globalized music, and of course there's Korean, American, and things like this. So these are all different examples of identity getting adjusted due to globalization, and it affects people as well. And then movies as well as the second thing. I think movies and film can affect the identity of people positively or negatively. And in education, I see that they're learning so many things about so many different places all over the world. In history and in English class, the textbooks are from overseas, in English. And the examples that they'll use for education will be global.
Yes.
And it will talk about the identity, it will talk about people and what they do and what they eat. And so this also has a big effect on the identity.
Mr. Hamza, you being born and raised in the West, did you always feel the feeling of belonging? that you were home. You were fitting to the identity that is there, especially in Canada. When you grew up as a child in the kindergarten or at school, did you always fit? Did you find yourself that, okay, this is where I belong?
Truthfully, no, I did not. And I'm going to go back to what you said with Sultan Hatim's speech this morning. He said there was three things about identity. The first was the Islamic identity.
Yeah.
For an Omani.
He didn't specify the differences, but he said we should hold on to our identity.
Right, and so you take on three, and you know they make one identity. The thing with growing up, you know, as a Muslim, of whatever background, for example, my parents immigrated from East Africa,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
From where about in East Africa?
Uganda.
Uganda.
Yeah, my mother and father were from Uganda, and my great grandfather was from Zanzibar. He came in, and then my great his father came from India, and then his third grandfather came from Turkestan. So
Okay.
a lot of identity there, you know, and of course the most time that my parents and my grandfather spent was in East Africa. So and then the most time I spent was in the U.S.
The
or
US,
Canada.
yeah.
So a lot of my identity will be more of the Western culture. But if you ask me, would I feel belonging and I feel I could identify with Canadian or American culture and lifestyle, I would say no. And I speak for a lot of people. Now, growing up, I would tell you, yes, I do. But we have to compromise so much just to feel belonging.
Like what? Give me some examples of compromise.
Give you a perfect example because we just passed the holidays of Christmas and New Year's.
Yes.
So a lot of the time growing up, we would, you know, in the weeks coming in December as a Muslim, it would be strange for myself to be able to be called to the stage, the school stage, and sing a Christmas song or a Christmas carol. You know, I know all of them. You know, jingle bells, and so we would perform, and we'd and you know there was very little a room for no. This is a one identity, and you know you're another, and so you don't have to do it. There was none of that. It was just you kind of had to blend.
And maybe you're the minority there.
I mean,
in
I
terms
was,
as a Muslim.
Of course, I was, and that's one aspect of being a Muslim. Then there was the other lack of belonging and identity, being not white. You know, which is the overwhelming majority.
Now you mentioning this,
Yeah.
you know, the difference between you and the Caucasians.
Yes.
If we cover the camera now and people hear you, they would assume that you are the traditional or conventional look of a North American. Yes, which
Try.
is a Caucasian person, blonde with blue eyes.
Yeah. Well, I've been on the phone. I might have to adjust my voice a little bit because there, you know, I grew
And then
up-
when they come and see you, they see you in a dish dash and
right,
a musar.
gets people confused.
So, talking about this, now that you're here in Oman, most probably you're talking to parents so many times who have never met you,
Yes.
and they have an assumption in their mind that this is a North American Caucasian teacher
Right.
talking to us.
Yeah.
And then when they come to the school, they see you like this.
Yes.
What happens?
I don't know what happens in their mind. I don't know how they feel in their heart. But I do know, and some of them, which I appreciate, are quite blown with me, saying, "Oh, you know,
We didn't expect to see this.
yeah." I mean, I just the other day I called in somebody for an interview, and I think one was an Omani, one was in Pakistani, and you know there were a few different nationalities there, and I spoke with them on the phone. I told them to come in, what time. I came down to greet them, and I asked one of them, could I help you? And hoping that they would say, I'm looking for Mr. Hamza.
Yes.
And they're like, no, or they'll say to me in Arabic, la adi, and not assuming that I was not understanding that I was the person on the phone with them.
Yes.
And then I've had the secretary say, who are Mr. Hamza? That's Mr. Hamza. That's him.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Come on, let's go to my office. So it's a little awkward sometimes for them on their part, but it's interesting because it's educational.
But do people ask you like?
No.
Where are you really from?
No. Well, I mean, in those situations, no, because I think it's professional. It's an interview, and they don't want to mess anything up. But I was shopping last night. This happens every day. I was shopping last night, and sometimes I don't realize that the guy checking out was an Omani. The guy bagging the things was from Bangladesh.
Yes.
He told me later on. And so my wife was asking me, do we need to get some water? Because it was right at the end.
Yes.
And she asked me in English. Now, my wife and I can speak in Arabic.
Yes.
But she obviously knows that I'm going to reply slowly, right? Because I have to think and
about
translate
it. Yeah.
and reply. So she generally talks to me usually in a mix of Arabic and English. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll go get some, right? And I went and I got some. And when I came back, she said to me, they're asking me why I'm speaking to you in English and why you're speaking to me back in English.
Yes.
And then they kind of got shy and they looked down. And then she told them again that I'm from America.
Yes.
He's born in Canada and he's lived here. And then they just had more questions. They were very intrigued. And well, why? Why? But you dress like that. And so I think there's also this idea that, being from there comes with a look. A beard, musara, a kumma, a dishdasha. No, you shouldn't look that way. But the truth is this: you go to New York City, you go to Times Square, or you go to Toronto, downtown Toronto, you're gonna find people in every single type of clothing, and I'm talking about from a kimono,
the Japanese kimono,
to sari, Indian outfit, a shalwar kameez, a thobe, a dishdasha, a Nigerian outfit, Libyan shalwar kameez, an English suit and tie.
You name it.
And you're going to get on the train, and you're going to get on the bus, and people are dressed like that. And people look different. I mean, and this is Los Angeles, New York,
Now let me ask you this, Mr. Hamza. Why did you come to Oman? Do you feel that you found your identity here more than the identity you were in the United States? Do you think you blend in here better?
It's a heavy question. I'll tell you the truth. I came to Oman. I left the West looking for identity. To tell you the real truth, and I mean, of course.
What identity, if you can be more specific, what identity were you looking for?
I was looking for an Islamic and a Muslim identity because yes. I mean my if you ask me, going back to the original question, what's my identity, I would tell you it's a Muslim identity because growing up my father would always tell me, you're Muslim first. He wouldn't tell me you're a Canadian first, you're an American first, you're yes. a East African first, you're a Ugandan first, you're a Turk first, you're an Indian first. He would never say that to me. You're an Arab first. He would not talk like that. Even though,
Why would your father emphasize that your identity is a Muslim?
Well, he told me later on, he said to me that in the West, you don't have a citizenship. Your citizenship is American or Canadian.
Yes.
So when you call yourself an Arab, or you call yourself an African, or you're not, because you're not from there and you don't have their passport anymore.
Yes.
Or you don't have their passport. You have a Canadian passport. You're an American.
Yes.
And so when people ask me, what are you? Okay, like in Usul, what's your original? Well, I can't say Usul, I can't get, because I didn't have a previous passport. I'm born in Canada, I was given a Canadian passport, I moved to America, I had an American. So that's not really a fair question because I don't really know anything else other than that. I didn't live in any place.
Going back to your father.
So my father would always
emphasizing that your identity is a Muslim.
And he said that you'll be able to connect with people who are Muslim in the West, but if I raised you teaching you that your identity is Muslim, because that's priority first. It doesn't really matter to me what country you're from or where you belong. He would always tell me you're a Muslim first. And so later on in my life, as I got older and I started to understand identity, in my 20s, I would say, I started to look for Muslim friends. You know, I started to look for people who thought like me, people who don't eat the foods that I don't eat, who who believe in the things that I believe. And that's natural. You generally look for people who have the same similar views and concepts as yourself.
Yes.
And so even getting married, I previously in my marriage, I never looked for where the person originally was from. I always looked for a Muslim, you know.
I think we will get back to this point after a short break.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back to the Dome podcast with my honorable guest, Mr. Hamza Al Kinani. Welcome back, Mr. Hamza.
Thank you, brother. It's a pleasure having you.
Before the break, we were talking about why you came to Oman, and you told me about finding the Muslim identity.
Right.
Did you find it?
I mean, I can say I did. I can't say I found it, but it's here. And I think that, and I speak for a lot of Western people, a lot. Like,
yes.
I can say more than a dozen that I know that have come and left North America.
To the Middle East.
To the Middle East,
Yes.
specifically the Gulf and Egypt maybe, and they've come to the Muslim countries, the majority Muslim countries, the Gulf countries, or as they would call the Khalij countries, to find their Muslim identity.
Because this was the place where Islam started.
Right, exactly. A large majority of the people that I know were African Americans, who some of them, many of them were not born Muslims. Some were. Their fathers may have converted.
So they were reverts.
They were reverts, or their father converted.
Yes.
Or their grandfather. So they wanted to also experience what it was like to live in a Muslim land. So they're coming from America with a maybe an African background, but no really relation to Africa. And they're coming to the lands of the Muslims, the Khalij, the Gulf countries, looking for this Muslim identity. So it's not just me. So I'm going to speak on behalf of all of them, because I speak with them quite often.
Before you speak on their behalf, the perception, what are you expecting to see when you come to the Muslim lands?
I first came about over a decade ago, and the first place I said I want to go was Saudi Arabia. I said, I want to go to Saudi Arabia. I want to go to Mecca. I want to live in Mecca. And I packed everything.
Yes.
I packed everything I could. My bags were overweight, and I paid extra, and I got on that flight.
Yes.
And I came to Jeddah. And, of course, I was going to do my Umrah. And, it was a beautiful feeling. I mean, I remember just touching down from the plane and putting my feet on the ground. I said, whoa, I'm walking on prophetic land. I said, I'm walking on land that prophets walked on. So that was the first, and the first thing I thought when I touched the floor. And unfortunately, I don't think like that anymore. So I do sometimes, but I mean, it starts to go away. Yes. But as you walk, it's like you feel that I need to be mimicking, or I need to be doing as they do, sunnah.
Yes.
Right. So sunnah of these prophets. As I'm walking in, and so because in North America, it's not. No religion started in North America or in the West. Not that I know of, and not that we know of in our history of any.
So you had a spiritual connection. With the land.
Exactly, and so, and also the idea that I believe in Allah.
Yes.
I believe that Prophet Muhammad, blessings be upon him, is the final prophet. And those people believe it too. Without even speaking to them, it was a great feeling. I can't explain it to you.
You're all on the same page.
We're all on that way. I mean, no more arguments about
halal food
and explaining why you can't eat. No more arguments about why you have your beard. No more arguments about why are you wearing a white dress?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes we would on Fridays, right?
Yes.
So none of those arguments, and just randomly, even if you didn't look the Muslim part, the Sunnah part,
Yeah.
which I didn't at that time, is that you would always have people coming and asking you, you know, wanting to start something.
Yes.
You know, unless you really blend in, unless you don't want to show your Muslim identity, you're gonna be asked a lot of questions generally in the West.
Yes.
And so it just felt good. It felt good, and it felt good to be ignored. Not all eyes are on you when you walk into the bank, the
Because
mall,
you're like everybody else.
You look like everybody else.
Yes.
And I can say that happens a lot for a lot of Black and brown people that come to the Middle East. And so, because, brother, I do have to say this. Identity is based a lot on color in the West, as you know, and as the world knows.
And that's why I had a Canadian friend who was also a teacher. When he came to Oman the first time, and he was like, he was shocked. He said, You have black people in the Middle East?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. It's a normal thing. We have all colors. And there's no different. You won't walk down the street with any complexion you have.
Right.
And people will stare at you. Nobody will stare at you because it's a mix of everybody. Everybody's welcomed.
You have me thinking so deep now. It's a bit emotional, you know, but it's true. It's another part of identity, because you asked me initially, how did I feel? Did I feel I identified with the people there? No,
Yes.
it was not because we didn't look like them.
Yes.
You know, I mean, there are parts of America where I did grow up in, where we have our own neighborhoods of just colored people, and that's it. And a lot of us stick together and stay there. I never liked to leave that area.
Yes.
You know, you would not find them go across across town to buy something, even though it was cheaper at the Walmart as like the Lulu of the West. Instead, buy it in their neighborhood because they feel comfortable staying in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so that's quite common, because you didn't like being in an uncomfortable environment, people looking at you.
Now, Mr. Hamza, the reason why I asked you why did you come to Oman, and you gave me the response, looking for the Islamic identity.
Right.
On the other hand, we have a lot of young people in the Middle East seeking the opportunity to go to the West.
Oh yeah.
Because they want that Western identity. And even it starts from here. They walk, they talk, they eat, they dress up the Western way. And they adore the idea of being, or having the image of a Western person. Now, these young men and young women, when they go to the West, are they accepted as a Western identity?
I mean, I know the answer to the question, and the answer, in short, is no. But then a lot of people might argue with me and say, "What do you mean we accept all people?"
Even if they have the accent? Because people seem to work very hard on their accent, on wearing jeans and eating Western food and so on, because they think that this will change the reality that they are not Arabs and they are,
I'll tell you this, just so I'm fair. I remember I walked up to a bunch of students from Saudi Arabia, and I knew it was very clear they were from Saudi Arabia because I had went there 10 years before, and I was in university after I went to Saudi Arabia. And
where did you meet them?
I met them on the campus.
In the States?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a large amount of Saudi students in America.
Yes.
There was a large amount in Canada, and there's a large amount in England, especially in Scotland. I went to Scotland, inshallah, there's a lot of them. They're very friendly guys, young guys, and I walked up to them, and I told them that, hala walla. You know, that's how they greet
Hala
one
wallah.
another. Yeah,
Hala
that's how right away they're your friends. You know, she said that. So I knew that from going from Saudi, and I spoke with them, and I told them I know about a guy, a Saudi guy, that I just randomly met here that's looking for a place to stay. And I told them the story, and they all spoke English at the time, and I did not know Arabic, and I told them, and immediately they embraced me. They told me they're taking me out for dinner that day, that moment, and they treated me so well. And later they told me, we've been here for so many years, and we never met a real born Canadian or American. Wow, we're happy to be with you.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah. And so I started to inquire a little. And they just told me, it's like, oh, they're not very friendly. Westerners are not very friendly. Canadians, Americans, they're not friendly. They don't want to be our friends. You know, they tried to talk to them in class.
Yeah.
And
also,
and this is by the way, this is their.
To be fair, you know, Arabs are very social.
Very social.
They're very social people.
Yeah.
And
that can come off a bit strange in the West, too.
they live because of these social gatherings and so on.
It's quite normal in the Khalij here for you're standing, waiting in line, and the guy
comes and talks to you and
starts off with some small talk. How you doing? And he might even ask you, "How's your health?"
No, and I
don't even know you.
And they also would tell you, "Come to my house for lunch."
Yeah, that will not happen in the West. Nobody will ask you, "How's your health?" and you've never even met him before.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? You know, you might be standing there and you might say, "It's hot in here, huh?" Expecting the other guy to give a reply, not talking to him saying, "Hi, how are you?" Expecting, "It's hot in here." "Yeah, I've been waiting here for about 10 minutes. Yeah, these lines take long. Yeah, tell me about it." And then that's it.
And that's it.
No, how you doing? How's your health?
So nobody's gonna ask you, "Mashi akhbar, mashi alum."
No, what's going on with you? Anything new? No, nothing, never.
Okay, now Mr. Hamza.
And besides that, brother, nobody will say to you, "May the peace and blessings of God be upon you." Assalamu alaikum.
Subhanallah.
I mean, sometimes we, even here as Arabs, we don't realize how powerful that statement is, that greeting is. You know, you're praying for somebody as you greet him.
Now mentioning this, Mr. Hamza, and talking about identity and young people being westernized and so on, there's a trend. You see people in offices, young people. You know, we have an open layout offices.
Yeah.
They're all open, everybody's sitting together. And you see these young men and women coming early in the morning, getting into the office, wearing their sunglasses and their Starbucks mug.
Okay, that's the style?
Yeah. And they don't greet anybody. They don't even say Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm not generalizing here, saying that's the trend.
But I mean, you're telling me that these things are happening here.
The changes that are happening, thank God they're not everywhere. But these are some of the cases where, you know, it's just a cool thing not to greet anybody and just to mind your own business.
To watch TV maybe.
Because that's a trend. That's the Western way. And I'm sure also when you go to the West, you have a lot of communities where greeting is important. Everybody greets everybody.
Any small town.
Yeah. So we're not generalizing, saying
yes, all Westerners don't greet.
Yeah. But again, for those young people from the Middle East wanting to have that Western identity, would they have to let go of their values, their morals, their religion, their identity, national identity, to be accepted in the Western
I'm gonna
identity or Western community?
I'm gonna answer that question by making a few comments. The first one would be, would you be comfortable enough to tell somebody, and this is if you're a practicing Muslim,
yes,
"Oh, I gotta go pray," because I knew, being a Westerner myself and being born and raised there, knowing that no one could judge me and say I'm from another place, I had a problem doing that.
When you say I want to go and pray,
I might make an excuse, right? Going to the bathroom, coming out with your face wet and your hands wet and everything
after doing wudu.
I mean, that's not. I don't think that they would probably
Or
do
putting your foot on the sink and doing the
food.
Yes.
Oh, bro, we're going to order some pizza and we're going to grab a couple beers, man. You're going to stay with us to watch this game. You don't know how to play the rules of American football. You're not going to eat pepperoni, pork pepperoni on a pizza. And you shouldn't if you're coming from Oman. And you're not going to have a Corona beer or a Heineken.
Yeah.
This is common culture on Sunday in a Western country.
So if you want to take the Western identity, you take it the full-fledged.
No, there's a lot of people that don't do those things. So forgive me. I'm not saying all people in the West do that, but within the indigenous, and I say the indigenous as in the Native American, African American, Canadian American of European descent people, and even a lot of the Asian and American descent people in Canada who've been there for a generation or two might have this culture and will have this culture, and it would be quite difficult to be in that environment coming from a place like this.
Yes. And normally, Mr. Hamza, if you want to change your identity to something, it means you're either not happy or not content with what you have, or you're just fascinated by another identity. And that's why you want to change. You're bored,
a lot of people will tell me all the time.
Or you would assume that it represents modernity. Yeah, I'm sure maybe you came across
I'm blamed a lot.
Some Muslims here,
yeah,
maybe here or anywhere else in the GCC, asking you, Mr. Hamza, why did you come and leave all that prosperity and modernity in the West and come and live in Marbella?
In my own job.
Yeah.
And even the other way around, my own siblings will ask, my own cousins, they'll ask, why are you dressing like that? Why do you want to live there? Why in a are you dumb type of way? Are you still, are you okay? Why do you want to live there? Why do you want to dress like that? What's the reason? They think I'm in a phase and I'm gonna snap out of it soon. A lot of my friends think the same thing, and then I have a lot of Omanis.
Yes, they ask
and
you
I'm
the
not
same
just gonna
thing.
say Omanis. I'm gonna say also a lot of
Arabs.
the Arab, Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi communities. If not thinking the same thing, but I'm gonna speak about them asking and them telling me that
why are you here?
Yeah, why are you here? I had some people actually tell me specifically saying that if I had your passport, I wouldn't even come to Oman. What's wrong? What's wrong with you? I've had people say it that blunt to me. I've been in groups of various nationalities that get together here in Oman or in other Khalij countries, and once they get a little comfortable, a lot of them, Egyptian, Palestinian, Tunisian, Algerian, even some Omanis. And when I get into those groups of different people, Syrians, when they come together, they've invited me, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, Indians. When I've been with them and sat with them, and the question will come out, it won't feel like they're attacking me, but they'll actually say to me, like, why would you come here? Now, there's one thing that no one has an answer for whenever I repeat it. I say, well, it's always nice to live in a Muslim country. Then it just stops.
And then the story ends.
Then it stops. But I mean, if I don't say that, they'll go deep into jobs, paying, wages,
they look
salary.
At it from the material world.
Yeah, from a material aspect. And minimum wage, by the way, is about 4 to 5 riyals an hour in a Western
now,
country.
Mr. Hamza, what's the price you paid to live this identity? If I would say, is there a price you paid?
Yeah, it's very hard. I lost my family, I lost my friends, I lost my culture, I lost my food, I lost my parents, I lost my siblings, I lost and when I said family initially, I meant my cousins and relatives. I lost the things that I grew up with. I lost the items, small items that maybe I collected as a young boy. I lost the clothing that I had, the shoes that I once wore, the interests that I once liked, the cars that I once used to build and collect, American old classic low-riding cars. Many of these things, I lost them all, but it was a sacrifice that I was willing to take and accept. And I said to myself, no matter what happens, I will stay strong and I'll stay. And not just in Oman, in the land of Islam.
You mentioned a word before we started the show, and you said Hijrah.
Yeah.
Okay? And you did Hijrah, coming to the Muslim land. You actually fulfilled a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ.
Exactly.
Many of us, Brother Hamza, who were born and raised here, we're born and raised Muslims, yeah? We're born in the land of the Prophet ﷺ. We didn't have the opportunity to do the sunnah of Hijrah, yeah? And you did it. So it is something huge to let go of everything you had for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Oh, that's huge.
And for the sake of living in a place where you can hear the adhan.
Yeah.
Living in a place where you see modesty. Living in a place where you can practice your faith without anybody questioning you. What does that mean to you, Mr. Hamza?
I was in America and I heard a Friday prayer, a khutbah. Khutbahs are quite long in America and Canada, 1 hour, and they're beating us up in those khutbahs. I love them. I miss them.
Because they charge you, for the week.
And they charge you for the week because you're surrounded by
fitna,
sin.
Yeah.
And, the man was talking about how Muhammad ﷺ was in Mecca. He loved it. It was his birthplace, but he was forced and kind of pushed out.
Yes.
And he didn't know where to go. And then he was invited or brought or told or whatnot to come to Medina.
Yes.
And obviously, he may have felt happy there. People were very accepting of him. But he didn't have a home. He had to live in...
He started from scratch.
Started from scratch, right? His camel stopped at one place, and he said, okay, I'm going to stay there, And now that story really, really inspired me. And at the end of this khutbah, the imam, he said, there are only 3 things, and I did not know this. He said, there's only 3 things that can forgive you of your sins in Islam. And immediately I thought, I have a lot of sins.
We all have sins, brother. Nobody's perfect.
I said, I never prayed in school. I never prayed throughout my whole, And he said, and so I lit up. I lit up. So, and one of them was that, you are not a Muslim and you take shahada and you become a Muslim. You accept that there's no God but Allah and Allah is the creator. And a lot of the times the people that are giving the khutbahs where I'm from are usually not born Muslims.
Yes.
So they've studied it, they've mastered it, the Islam, and then they can talk to you in a Western identity aspect, and then talk to you about how much Islam has helped them.
We will hold on to that thought, Mr. Hamza.
All right.
And take a short break and come back to discuss the 3 things that you heard in the khutbah.
Sure.
Inshallah. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back to Dome Podcast. And we just stopped with Mr. Hamza when he was talking about the 3 things the Imam was saying in Khutbah al-Jum'ah.
Yeah, that changed my life. And he said the second thing, he said the first thing was that
taking shahada.
Shahada. The second thing is that you make Hajj.
Yes.
You go to the pilgrimage.
So the Prophet ﷺ says, if you perfect your Hajj when you come back as if you were newly born.
Right. Okay. He also said if you go for Umrah in Ramadan, it's like the reward of Hajj.
Of Hajj, yes.
And I went and did it immediately after very shortly after that.
Mashallah.
And then he said the third thing was you will leave, and he gave a story, but he said in the moral of that story is that if you make Hijrah, fi sabilillah. You
Yes.
move to a land for the sake of Allah, to change your life, to start fresh.
Yes.
It's like being a new Muslim again, and it can clear you for all of your. It can clear you for all of your sins. And I said, I need to.
And
do
a
this.
light bulb.
Yeah, a light bulb popped, and I said, I need to do this. I need to work towards it. And alhamdulillah, after a long struggle, many years after that, here I am, you know.
Now, Mr. Hamza, you are an educator and you work with young children.
Yeah.
And we want to educate our children to do the hijrah. To do the hijrah from dunya to Allah. Even they're here in Oman. We
Right.
don't ask them to go to another country.
Yeah.
They're already in the lands of a prophet. But they need to do hijrah because the trend, the way we see things are moving towards the direction that is not pleasing Allah and His Messenger.
Absolutely.
So, as educators, as parents, as imams, what can we do to teach our children to do hijrah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
I mean, I think I always there's one thing that the Prophet Muhammad used to always say, a hadith that he used to always say, that I used to always keep on my phone, and he used to and it said that you cannot have Islam without akhlaq, good
Yes.
manners, and adab,
Conduct.
conduct, good manners and good conduct. And I think number one, it starts there.
Yes.
Stop gossiping. Stop talking bad about things that you don't like if you can't change them yourself. Stop, cheating, lying, stealing, and stealing. I mean, not going to the store and picking something up. Stealing, as in, taking what's not rightfully yours, credit or anything like that. Treating people right, treating humans good, forgiving them. I'm always talking with my kids, and they're telling me, well, I don't like this boy because he did this, and I always say, well, what if he had this problem? What if he has this problem? What if his dad's not there?
Yes.
Giving them excuses, and I'm guilty of all these things myself
Yes.
first. I'm guilty of all of them first. And I'm talking to myself first. But I think these are some very basic things, very, very basic things that we need to stop, because it's polluting our mind and it's polluting other people's minds. And we're actually, when we do these things, one or two of these, the three of these things, and we're doing it with other people, it's making other people less lower than what they already are. So you're bringing other people down and bringing them away from the religion of Islam. And so I think that's number one. And number two, I know the thing is to say pray and go to the mosque, but I think number two, I think that you really have to have a lot of iman. You have to have a lot of faith.
How do you build faith in your heart?
You have to just trust that everything that's going on in your life,
Yes.
whether it's something bad, whether it's you're in a situation that you don't like, it's because Allah wants you to be going through it. And you can change it too if you
Yes.
work towards it and you have that belief. So you have to have a lot of faith that what you're going through is good for you, and believe that something good will come later. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْأُسْرِ يُسْرًا.
Yes.
With hardship comes ease. And of course, then after that, praying, building the relationship with Allah. And I think, when I say praying, I think it's very important for us to make our prayers on time.
Yes.
They make a great schedule for our life. And I'm guilty of not making those prayers up myself and missing them sometimes and being late. But waking up every day knowing that I'm going to pray Fajr, I'm going to pray my 5, even if they're late.
Yes.
Praying to Allah, because everything that we have, I appreciate you, Shaykh Hatim, for having me. And so as gratitude, and I know this is very common in Omani culture, to be hospitable, giving gratitude, and I thank you, I pray for you. Shukran, jazakallah khair, Allah yafadhak. We say these things.
Mentioning this, I need to clarify something, because most of the time, I'm talking on behalf of the Omanis, we think that being hospitable, being kind, being nice, it's an Omani identity.
Right.
But we need to keep on reminding our kids that it is an Islamic identity, because the Prophet, peace be upon him, did these things. we are taking it for granted that we were born and raised this way. So when we do it, we don't think of it, oh, it's a sunnah. We don't think of it that as a Muslim, I'm required to do it. We think of it, no, because we're Omanis, that's why we're doing it.
And to add to that, I think
there's nothing wrong with being Omani, having like an Omani identity.
Don't do it because you're Omani.
But I think the most important identity you should have first is the Islamic identity.
Right. And all of those things fall into the category of an Islamic identity. And add to that, mashallah, Omanis are very kind. I will say that. I mean,
that's why you're stuck with them. You're married to one.
I mean, everybody, every nation, every people have their faults. But generally, for the most part, Omanis are kind people. You know, in the sense that no one's gonna. And I'm not saying that someone's just gonna randomly come up to you and say, "Come to my house for coffee" or do that. I mean, that may happen, but. No one's going to yell at you. No one's going to holler at you. No one's going to curse you. You know, it's very rare for these things to happen.
You have a unique experience when you first arrived. The first day you arrived here and you were looking for to do your first Jum'ah.
Yeah.
Tell us that story. I think that's an interesting story, Mr. Hamza.
Yes, I remember when on my very first day here in Oman, I think it was my first day, I probably was resting from jet lag, but I think the second or third day I stepped out. No car, no nothing. I'm in the middle of Boshar, and Boshar is a sand dune at the time. Nothing was there as it is now.
10 years ago.
No, it was 5 years ago. 2016.
Yes.
Nothing was there. It was a sand dune, and there's a few cars passing, and I remember just walking outside with my Western clothes on with me and my friend, and we were walking. And a car pulled up, and he said, he honked before, and he pulled up, and he just started to talk to us. And he said, "What are you guys doing? Where are you guys going? What do you And he knew, immediately that we're not from here. And he just said, "Well," my friend said, "First, I want to go get these pants. I need them tailored. Come on." He didn't even listen to what we had to say. He just started to ask us, "Where do you guys work? What do you do? This. We need to go to pray. I'm taking you there. You're gonna do that. You're gonna come with us, and then we're gonna have lunch together. And we're gonna go to. We don't even know this guy. Total stranger. Picked us up in his car, and spent the whole day, part of the day with us. Just like that.
Subhanallah.
Yeah. So, going back to what we were saying about the hijrah of the mind, here in Oman is first of all, I mean, a great thing about Oman and Islam in Oman is that a lot of those features are here of kindness and akhlaq and adab and respect and manners. A lot of them are here.
Will this identity that you were looking for, the Islamic identity, help you to cope anywhere you go to the Muslim world, in the Muslim world?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
so today, if you move to Morocco or Egypt or Saudi, will you be able to cope?
Right, I could, and having a lot. I mean, I don't know all of their, I don't know all of their customs and all of their, manners, or as they would call it, adat taqalid, manners of traditional manners. I may not know all of them, but having some understanding of Muslim characteristics in an Islamic identity, even in the West, it helped me here as well. Simple things as far as face your shoulders towards a gentleman when you greet him, or anybody when you greet them. These kind of things, they all help. But I will add to this, because I know I have a lot of our Western audience sometimes, and I do post my videos sometimes to Western people, and I will say this, is that there's no place in the world you're going to find the perfect Islamic country.
Yes.
No place. Because everybody is struggling to follow Islam.
Yes.
Everybody is struggling to be a good Muslim. Just like there's no perfect place for Christianity. It's not going to be in America. It's not going to be in Jerusalem.
And the blend is always there.
Right.
Because the level of faith in everybody is different. And also, if you're living in a multicultural society, you have so many religions living in one society, so many cultures, so many nationalities, so many tribes,
right,
so many ideologies. You will not be able to have or maintain a one standard of culture
Exactly.
among everybody,
Right.
which is also good to have this blend.
And Western people also know that they're quite tolerant, being in such a place, so they can handle it. But unfortunately, I've found that a lot leave. A lot of them come, they get a little frustrated because of the culture, because of the language,
Yes.
and they end up leaving. But I think it's on us to learn Arabic. Sometimes for us, we feel, I came
us
here
mean
on us
the West.
Westerners.
Yes.
But we feel that sometimes, I came here, I worked in an English school, and they're not learning English, and they don't know it, and I can't get along with people because obviously you're gonna have social issues if you don't speak the language and you don't learn the language.
Yes.
And so that needs to be the first thing that you need to work on, because they're not gonna start making khutbahs in English here in the Middle East, or having halaqas and things like this that are common in the West in English.
Now, Mr. Hamza, you remember the category of young people who we talked about in the beginning, that they were they're very intrigued or impressed by the Western identity,
Right.
and they want to be there and so on, and maybe their only facts that they know about this identity is from the movies or the media.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the reality is totally different.
Yeah.
You're from there, Can you tell us about the reality of being in the West? What these young people are expecting to see, and what is the actual reality?
Well, I'll tell you what the real reality is that a lot of the times when you're going to find a immigrant / refugee / migrant from a Muslim country to a Western country, he's bound to bump into some Muslims. There's a lot of Muslims in the West. I always tell my wife, I said, she always asks me sometimes, how do you know this about it, and how do you know that? And I always tell her, we have more Muslims in America and Canada than in Oman. So, I'm around. I've been surrounded by Muslims. Like, we have a lot, and so they don't think about that. They don't think, whoa, actually he's right. They were around a lot of Muslims there, and so and coming from all different countries. So if you're coming from a Muslim country, and let's say you're in Oman, and you're coming to the West, immediately you're going to bump, maybe not immediately, but sooner than later, you're going to bump into some Muslims.
Yes.
And generally Western Muslims. And they're going to ask you, how you doing? You're going to recognize your accent. They're going to know, you're going to say where you're from. I'm from Oman, Pakistan, Nigeria, wherever. And they're going to ask you for your name, and you're going to have an Arabic name.
Yes.
And what they're going to do is they're going to expect you, in some way or some sense, to help them with their Islam. Generally, this is very, very common. It happened with me.
When I went abroad, sorry to cut
Yes.
you off. When I went abroad for my studies, the people in that country, they used to call us the children of the Sahaba. And some of us didn't even know the basic things in fiqh, So they look up to us, and they expect us to teach them.
There is a brother,
rightfully.
and I'm not going to say his name, but there was a brother, and this is a true story. He was from a very big Muslim country, mashallah. He came to our city, and he had a girlfriend. He didn't marry didn't go back to his country to marry. He had a child out of wedlock, everything. SubhanAllah, sinful, was doing everything. But he had a beautiful voice of Quran. Very, very beautiful voice of Quran. I mean, naturally, most Arabs generally will.
Because they learn.
Because they learn it, right,
yeah.
in school. Just like how we learn French or Spanish. And I remember, generally a Muslim will always come out in 3 times of the year. Jummah, Eid, and Ramadan,
Yes.
So
the Muslim identity
naturally, it will come out of all of them,
Yes.
And he showed up for Ramadan, and I remember there wasn't anybody to pray and anybody to lead. And I mean, when he looked around and he saw nobody's there to lead the prayer. Nobody was there, and then when he's meeting people and they're saying "Assalamu alaikum," he knew that, I better go, and so they pushed him and they told me, brother, go on.
You're an Arab?
Yeah, go, you go. And I was just sitting there and I was watching, and subhanallah, he led salah. People loved it.
Subhanallah.
He became the khatib. He became completely changed his life. Completely changed his life, and everybody loved him. I knew somebody that had a child and named him after him.
After this man.
After this man. So that does happen, and I've had a lot of people, especially from the Khalij, that have told me. And I've come back and I've met them here in Khalij, in Bahrain, in Emirat, and in Saudi, and I came back and met them. And you know what they told me? They told me, subhanAllah, we became better Muslims there.
SubhanAllah.
And when we came back here, and I asked them, what do you guys miss? And they said, I miss being Muslim there. I feel like we practice more. We take it for granted here.
Yes.
Because
when you go to a society where you are the minority, you feel the value of your faith.
And your identity.
Yeah. And I always tell people, for students who are going abroad on a scholarship, they either come back in 3 conditions. They either come back the way they left, or misled, or guided by Allah.
Yeah.
So which one of them are you?
Right.
So that's why it's very important to have a strong foundation where a Muslim identity, wherever you go, it will never change. So even if you go for a scholarship, you have friends who drink and party all night long, you will always preserve your identity as a Muslim.
And you and I both know, we know common people, Omanis.
Yes.
Didn't have an Islamic identity at all at home, went to the West and came back, mashallah.
They changed.
They started to teach their family about Islam.
And when they came back, their families asked them, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Where are the girlfriends?
Yeah.
And what happened to you?
Yeah.
You became more religious when you traveled.
And I think it's because they couldn't identify with the society there. And so, as you said, you start to realize the value of your identity.
Yes.
And so you want to be your identity,
And even Mr. Hamza, for those Muslims who go to the West and they don't want to be associated with Islam and the Islamic identity whatsoever, it doesn't change the reality, the way people look at you.
No.
Because once you go to the immigration, your passport says Muhammad, your looks say, you're an Arab, whether you like it or no. So you're going to have the same treatment as any other Muslim, whether you like it or not. Some of them, they change their name from Muhammad to Mo, or from Jamal to JJ. Yeah. It won't change the reality of who you are.
Right.
Yeah. And if something happens, the cops will come and look for you.
Yeah.
Whether you are praying or not.
Yeah.
So I actually once I was going on a business trip, and I had friends from the office. And on the day of the travel, they came to the airport. Everybody's like clean shaved, and I was wearing my rishdash and my turban, all in white.
Right.
I said, "You're gonna give us a hard time at the airport. We're gonna delay. They're gonna question you." And I just smiled, and thought to myself that, what? I'm proud to be Muslim. I don't need to change.
Right.
Just to cope with everybody else.
Right.
And when we arrived our destinations, the immigration officer told me, "Here you go, sir. You're free to go." And they were there for questioning.
Hassled.
Because the picture they had on the passport looked different than the way they look. Because they had jeans and T-shirt and clean shaved. But in the passport, they look like me.
Oh man. Subhanallah.
Any last words, Mr. Hamza, for the Western Muslims who are still living as minority, the young people, Muslims who are in the Middle East? And
no, I mean, I would say this is that I get this question a lot, and it's to my Muslim brothers and sisters here in Oman first. you know, I understand there are a lot of great things about the West. I mean, it's been known as the land of innovation, correct?
Yes.
There's a lot of great things in the West, and there's nothing wrong with traveling there to go study and go learn, and bringing back that knowledge. But you should bring it for the sake of benefiting your people.
Yes.
You know, you can, and that's a way of identifying with the culture. You know, going over there, traveling there, being with them, learning from them,
Yes.
and bringing it to uplift our people.
Yes.
But to go there and socially and physically try to blend in has no benefit, because in the end you're still going to come back to wherever you're from, Sharqiyya or Muscat or Ma'bela, Junubiyya, or whatever. You know, at the end that's what you are. Yeah. And you have to be proud of what you are. To my brothers and sisters in America and Canada and England, you know, and all the Western countries, and I get this question a lot, and they ask me, you know, what you know, what's it like to live there as a Muslim? And I say it's a beautiful thing, and I'm not just saying that just about Oman.
No
just
regrets.
Generally, no regrets. I'm very happy with the decision that I made to live amongst my people of faith, people who have the same belief as me, people who will not judge me, people who look like me.
Yes.
I'm very, very happy to be here.
And we are honored to have you, Mr. Hamza.
Thank you. And they, you know, there's this assumption, and I have to clear this up, there's this assumption that the Arabs don't like us. The Arabs won't like us. And I would say this. Maybe they might not understand you, and you might not understand them because of language.
Yes.
So I think learning the Arabic language as a Muslim is very, very important and top priority for all of us. And I'm not the only one saying this. A lot of people have said this. And that can make things a lot more easier for you. But as you see, alhamdulillah, I'm here, I'm settled, I've been embraced by so many people here, and been married, and my children are mixed, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
You know, my daughter doesn't even want to speak English. I'm trying to teach her English, and I tell her, come here, and she says, ta'al baba, ta'al. You know?
MashaAllah,
so, alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamza. Jazakallah khair. And we've been honored today on Dome Podcast to have you on the show. And it was very fruitful, and hope it is not the last time.
Thank you, brother, and I appreciate you. I want to leave you with one last quote.
Yes.
Remember where you're from, and you'll always know where you're going.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. Yeah. Dear brothers and sisters, thank you very much for tuning in on Dome Podcast. See you next time, inshallah, from me, Hatim Al Abdissalaam. And don't forget our slogan, under one roof. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.